Some lenders will charge a point just to make a little bit extra money. But, usually like 1 point or 2 point, is not, out of this world. If they're charging like 5 points, you should probably go find another private money lender. And the cool thing, again, when you're working with private money lenders, most people don't even know what anything that I just said is. I tell them exactly what I told you. And I say, hey, all the interest accrues until the sale of the property. We'll pay you all your principal, all your interest once we sell it. And they're like, oh, cool, that sounds great. I don't even give them an option for monthly payments.
Hi, everybody. Jose Luis Morales here. Welcome back to another episode of the Residual Real Estate Agent. Today, we've got a very special guest. His name is Austin Rutherford. You might have seen him on social media. He's got a following of over 1 million followers on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Today, he is going to be teaching us how to buy a house with no money down. This is not a gimmick. Not something to grab your guys' attention. This is something that's real. So if you have bad credit, no credit, doesn't matter. Welcome to the show, Austin. How are you?
I'm fantastic, brother. I'm looking forward to this today.
Good, man. So let's just start off by saying, who is Austin Rutherford and how did you get involved in this wonderful world of real estate?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, moved down to South Florida about a year ago. My original dream was to be an NBA basketball player. But, that didn't pan out. And, just like anything in life, I was depressed because basketball was my life. And I was like, all right, well, like, what do I do now? Fell into a book called Think and Grow Rich. Really just opens up the mind to like opportunity and possibility. And I was sitting on my rooftop journaling in Phoenix, Arizona. I was playing basketball out there. And I saw like a 7-unit apartment building and it just clicked. It was like, if there's like 7 people paying this one guy money, like he's got to be making money. And that's when I fell in love with real estate, bought, whatever books or little, courses I could have mailed to me. Learned everything I could about real estate. Ended up buying a duplex when I was 20 years old, just to keep as a rental property. Ended up flipping my next house at 22, raised $250,000 to fund that first deal. And since then, bought, flipped, wholesaled hundreds of houses, own about 100 rental properties, new construction, and basically everything in between. So focus right now is keep building the real estate portfolio, building the brand on social media, and then fell in love with cryptocurrencies. I know it's down right now, but I still believe in it long term. So that's kind of been the focus.
And it's kind of crazy because I get a lot of people telling me, well, like, I want to get into real estate, but I don't have any money, or I want to do this, but I don't come from a wealthy family, or I don't have resources to capital. And it sounds like you were able to start off without having a lot of money, and obviously it grew. So one, can you buy a house with no money down? And if so, what is the process to do it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I kind of say like I had 2 starts in real estate. The first was that duplex. It was a rental property. I just put a down payment down and got a bank to finance the rest because I didn't understand real estate, right? I've never done a deal like that since because I had to use my, part of my money for that deal, and I don't want to use my money. So going forward, the way that, I do real estate now is with none of my own money. So, it's the term, the Buror strategy: buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. I say it's how we get free houses, but you raise 100% other people's money to buy and renovate the deal. And then once you go rent it out, then once you go to refinance it with the bank, you want to be all in for 70 to 80 cents on the dollar, depending on the bank that you refinance with. And then on the refinance, they're going to give you a new loan. You'll be able to pay off all your debt to everybody that you owe, interest, holding costs, utilities, purchase, rehab, everything. And then you own a house, a free house, because you never had to put any of your own money into the deal. And then if you run the numbers correctly, it'll then cash flow from that point forward. So you get a free house that appreciates, you can get depreciation, you can get cash flow, and you get tenant mortgage buy down going forward from that point.
So basically you're buying them with the Buror or analyzing them via the Buror, but how do you go about like raising the money? Like, meaning like, is it just like a rich uncle that you have? Is it like a rich friend, or like, how did you go about that? And how did you get that idea to be able to raise money?
Yeah. So that's the biggest question is like, well, all right, cool. That sounds great. Like, how do we get the money? And for me, I'll just tell you, my first story of how, I was able to raise that $250,000. And, it's changed, different variations to that going forward. But the entire idea of, private money, like private money is literally anybody. It's like me calling you up like, yo, bro, I need 200 grand. Are you interested? And you lending me 200 grand or whatever the number is. So, it's not these large institutions that have, underwriters and LOs and, underwriting guidelines and all this other stuff. It's literally me to you, doing a deal. And so it's 100% relationship based. And the way that I came about my first private money lender, I fell in love with the idea of real estate. I started going to networking events, just meeting as many people as I could. Came across a lady. She was like, yeah, I just retired. I rolled my retirement account to a self-directed IRA. So, I have a few $100,000 that I'm going to use myself to, invest into my own deals. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm getting started as well, looking for my first opportunity, blah, blah, blah. Talked a little bit more and, exchanged contact information and parted ways. A year later, I ended up getting the opportunity to buy my first flip. And it was a $74,000 purchase and a $170,000 rehab, $250,000 to fund this deal. I didn't have the money. So I was sitting there. I was like, all right, cool. Like, how do I get this deal funded? And called a bunch of people and then it clicked. I was like, let me call this lady from a year ago. Picked up the phone, gave her a call. I was like, hey, how's real estate? And she was like, hey, still trying to get into the game, haven't gotten in yet. And I was like, oh, cool. I was trying to get in as well. I actually have my first opportunity. Here's what the deal looks like. Is this something you're interested in lending? And she came out, we happened to be in the same city, came out, took a look at the deal, and then ended up, funding the deal at 12%, 2 points for me. So, literally private money can come anywhere. I've met a lot of people at networking events. I've met a lot of people from, referrals of friends. Like I go to my friends' family reunions and talk to like their aunts and uncles and everything. I've met people in the bank. I've met people at car shows. I've met people at country clubs. Like literally anybody and everybody, anywhere, you have an opportunity to meet a private money lender. So it's just 100% relationship based. They like you, they believe in you, and they'll fund the deals for you.
I did the opposite of you. I basically would save 20% down at the very beginning of my career, but every time I did that, it left me so broke because I would deplete all my capital, and then I wouldn't have much money to reinvest because I was always putting that 20% down. So it was just a different approach. I started making a list of people, like clients that I was working with that were real estate friendly. And then I was like, okay, if I ever want to raise money, these are the people that I would reach out to first. I didn't need that at the time, but I just kind of started keeping tabs on that. It sounds like it's something similar to what you did, where you kind of had to like your little list of potential people that you can raise money from. Maybe it doesn't turn out right there on the spot, but at some point in the future, it could be something that you guys kind of work together as you build up that relationship. So talk to us about like a self-directed IRA. Like what is that? Is that the best way to kind of raise money? Or is it just pretty much anybody?
Yeah. And to your earlier point, like even to this day, anytime I save a contact in my phone and I think that they have any idea, potential of being a private money lender, I save them under PML, private money lender. So if I ever come to a point where I need to raise money and I'm unable to, I just search my phone for PML and I just get on the phone and start calling. So it's called digging your well before you're thirsty. You always want to be trying to raise money because you never know when you're going to need more money for a bigger deal that comes across the table. And the other thing is like people think, all right, cool. Like I know who's going to be my private money lender. It's Warren Buffett, right? He's not going to lend you money because like these guys, if they're super, super intelligent and super, super successful, the likelihood of them lending you money at terms that you want is like zero. Because like I'll lend money. Yeah, I'm going to take 50% of the deal, right? So when you're dealing with somebody who like gets it, those aren't the best people to borrow money from. The guys that have, 5 Ferraris, right? The best people to borrow money from are the mom and pops who have worked and, saved up 200 grand, 500 grand, $1 million, just working throughout their life. And you give them an opportunity to invest with you to make, an 8, 10, 12% return, whatever the number is, secured by a real piece of real estate versus the stock market. We've all seen what happened to the stock market over the last few weeks, right? So like those are the types of private money lenders that you want. I think, from everybody I borrow money from, they've got maybe 3, 4 million tops. So it's not like these mega, mega, mega wealthy people. It's usually people from like 100 to 500K are usually the people we borrow the most money from. And then with that, a lot of the money comes from these self-directed IRAs that you just mentioned. So a lot of people think that they can only borrow money from like cash sitting in a bank account, right? And the likelihood of somebody just having 300 grand in their checking account, like it's probably not that great. So you got to teach people how to get access to money. So if they have cash in a bank, like absolutely, you can borrow that money. But there's so many more ways to tap into money, like refinances or HELOCs or home equity lines of credits, cash value life insurance policies. So if somebody's paying into a life insurance policy, sometimes those have cash value. And then the biggest one that I've been able to borrow money from is self-directed IRAs. So again, people work, throughout their life. They pay money into their retirement accounts. Their employers match whatever they pay in for the most part, and they saved up 400 grand. Then they retire and now they're just, out living life. So you're talking to these people that got 400 grand in a retirement account. The thing is, in whatever retirement account that they have, they can't lend you money. So it has to be rolled to a self-directed IRA through a self-directed custodian. And you can Google self-directed IRA custodians, and there's tons of companies out there, but it has to be hosted with one of these companies. So they have to roll their IRA to a self-directed IRA, and then they direct that investment. So they'll say, hey, I got 400 grand here. I want to lend 200 grand to Austin on 123 East Main Street for this deal. So, they're able to move it out of, a stock market that they might maybe getting 4, 6, 8, 10, 12%, whatever it is. But it's like this, right? It's a huge emotional roller coaster that they have to ride. They can roll that over, invest with you, and earn a 6, 8, 10, 12% return on their money, secured by an actual asset, a piece of real estate.
Not only that, but they can also make points as well too. In some cases, they can make points by funding the loans. So I know that obviously you talked about like just whenever you're at different places, you make a note of people that could potentially be money lenders. Would there be any tips of advice to people who maybe don't have a lot of friends, don't have a lot of connections, to go out and build those connections, like maybe like certain networking groups that they can get into, certain places where people are more likely to eventually turn into some sort of relationship like this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the only way you're going to find money is to be around money, right? So if you're hanging out at the bar in the middle of the country, like there's probably not going to be that many wealthy individuals, right? So I always say like you want to be around the money. So car shows, country clubs, golf outings, high end steakhouses. I remember going to steakhouses and drinking water at the bar, just trying to network with the people that are next to me. Like I wanted to be around the money, right? So the next thing is like, okay, once you're in an area around money. Side note, real estate networking events are amazing because usually those people at least understand what private money lending is. And it's a much better, easier sell to get them to invest with you versus somebody you meet at a steakhouse. They're going to think you're a scammer, right? So it's a lot easier because they at least kind of get the gist of it. So I met a lot of people at real estate networking events. But once you're in those positions, you start, talking to people, and usually it starts off with like, hey, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I'm a doctor, I own some rental properties, and I'm just here trying to learn a little bit about real estate. And then they ask you, what do you do? And most people are like, oh, I'm trying to get into real estate, or yeah, I'm a real estate investor, or yeah, I'm a wholesaler. Like nobody cares about that stuff. They're immediately going and talking to the next person. So you got to find a way to be interesting to those people. And for me, my answer to that all the time was, yeah, actually, I'm a real estate developer, and I teach other people how to potentially earn double-digit returns on their investments. Well, how do you do that? What do you mean? Can you teach me how to do it? Absolutely. I'd love to teach you. And then you talk about private money lending. So you just have to say something that sparks that interest for them to ask you a follow-up question. And then you need to be educated about, private money, the documents, the processes, and then you can talk about that. But you got to get somebody to ask you, what is that, to ever have an opportunity at them being a private money lender.
Would you be open to going a step further in that conversation? Meaning that, like, obviously we've got their attention. Now I say, Austin, teach me about it. Like, what would that process look like if possible?
Yeah. So, you asked me, what do I do? Hey, I'm a real estate developer. I teach other people how to earn double-digit returns. Really? Like, how do you do that? So there's an SEC guideline, right? And they say like you can't pitch somebody an interest rate without first building a relationship with them. And meeting somebody at a bar and trying to close them on a $300,000 loan's probably not the best idea anyways. So when somebody would follow up with me with that, I'd give them a little bit and then ask them for their contact to meet them at a later point or follow up with them with a phone call. So my answer would be something along the lines of like, yeah, like, do you own a house? And they'll be like, yes or no. Well, have you ever owned a house? Yes or no. Well, do you know anybody that's ever owned a house? Yes. Perfect. So I'm assuming they bought the property and they got a bank loan on the property. So if they ever default on their payments, the bank's able to take the property back to recoup their investment. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. Perfect. So what we do as real estate investors, we go out here and we search for deals all day, every day, and find amazing deals, sometimes at 50, 60, 70 cents on the dollar. And what we do, instead of getting these banks extra rich, we give those opportunities to individuals like yourself where they become the bank and they can fund these deals collateralized by an asset that's 50, 60, 70 cents on the dollar. And we can afford to pay them, potentially double digit returns. So if it's something you'd ever be interested in talking further about, I'd love to take you out to lunch sometime and give you a little bit more info on it. So, it's not just like, hey, you want to be a private money lender? It's giving them a very real perspective. Everybody understands banks, right? And then giving them an opportunity to invest with me. I'm not asking them to invest with me. I'm giving them an opportunity of a lifetime to be able to invest with me. So you just want to get them intrigued and then ideally set a follow-up appointment.
I love it, bro. You know what's so funny about that? Like, even as a real estate agent, the way that you say certain things, like if I just say like, hey, look, I sell houses, or I can sell your house for top dollar, the way that you present things is either going to help you or hurt you. And the way that you just presented that is amazing, bro, because it breaks it down like extremely simple for somebody to do that. And then I know that you said that you would educate them as well too, as to like document and that sort of thing. Are you open to going over something like that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So this wouldn't be on like the initial conversation, unless they're just like want to know everything about it. You can go a little bit deeper, but you want to try and get their information and schedule up a follow-up appointment. And what I do is I created a credibility packet. So it's like a 10-page document. It talks about me, talks about private money lending, talks about what it looks like, an example deal, a frequently asked question page. And then I send that to them before the follow-up meetup, so they at least have an idea of what they're walking into, what we're going to be discussing. So that's in a perfect situation. But if not, on a follow-up meeting, one of the things you want to talk to obviously is or at least one of the questions you're going to get is like, well, how am I protected? Like, how do I know you're not going to steal the money? So that's where these documents come into play. So first off, you don't ever want to say your money's guaranteed. That'll put you in prison very, very quickly. So we never, under any circumstances, use the word guaranteed. We always say what your money is backed by, the asset that is backing your investment. So when people ask us, like, well, how do I know you're not going to steal the run away with the money? Great question, Mr. Lender. Actually, we use documents that back your investment. So where's your money at currently? Well, it's in the stock market. Okay, what do you own in the stock market? You own a piece of paper that says, hey, I own 1,000 shares of Tesla. What happens if that paper disappears? You don't own anything. It can literally crash overnight. So the cool thing with real estate, just like banks, you get a mortgage on the property. So if I default on the property for whatever reason, you have a mortgage that can foreclose on the property and take back the investment, the asset, to recoup your investment. On top of that, you get a promissory note from my business and me personally. So I'm signing a business guarantee and a personal guarantee. So if I file bankruptcy, I'm personally still liable for this money to pay you back. That'd be, 200 grand at 10%, whatever the terms of the agreement are. And then if I default ever, if I miss a payment, you use the promissory note and the mortgage to foreclose on the property and then recoup your investment. On top of that, when we buy the property, you get a title insurance policy. So if anything's wrong with the title, you're protected there. And then we also carry a builder's risk insurance policy. So if the house burns down or floods or gets robbed or anything happens, you get paid out before we ever receive a penny. So those are the 4 documents, that you'll get at closing, Mr. Lender. So those are the 4. And then the next thing, this is kind of going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I've had this question asked me to kind of stump me at the beginning. So let's say you're raising 200 grand and it's a 100K purchase and 100K rehab. So you're raising $200,000 to fund this deal. At closing, when I buy this property, in a perfect world, the seller, the lender funds the purchase and the rehab. So they lend 200 grand the day of closing. So the day of closing, the seller gets 100 grand, and then you get roughly 100 grand, depending on closing costs. But you get roughly $100,000 to then fund the renovation. So I was talking about this with a lender one time, and they're like, "Okay, cool. What if you take that 100 grand and get on a plane and fly to Cancun?" I was like, "That's a good point," because now they lent 200 grand on an asset that might only be worth 120, $130,000 because the renovation work has not been done yet. So when I got asked this question the first time, I was like, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. They didn't lend me the money. So I'm going to tell y'all ahead of time, you can use what's called an escrow agreement and a rehab agreement. So what that basically means is at closing, 100K will go to the seller, and then the remaining $100,000 will be left in an escrow account that basically says as work is completed on the property, they'll release some of that money to reimburse you for the work. So, you go out there, put 10, 20, 30 grand into a house, or you can even get the contractor to float that sometimes. And then, after you put 20 grand in, you submit a draw, they send you $20,000, and it's 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20 until you spend the 100 grand and get the project done. So again, in a perfect world, I don't like using my money, right? I don't ever want to have to front my own money into this deal. So I've done that a couple of times in the past with a new lender. And when I do something like that, I'll say, hey, there's 100K for the rehab. How about you give me $20,000 or $30,000 to start? Leave the remaining 70 grand in escrow. Just let me get 20 or 30 to start the process and then draw. So if I disappear, I'm only disappearing with 20 grand. Obviously, I'm not going to disappear, but it's significantly reduces their risk under those circumstances. So again, that's kind of a rabbit hole. Most people aren't even going to ask that question because you don't know what you don't know. But if you get somewhat of an educated investor that asks that, you can present them with an escrow agreement, a rehab agreement, and a escrow release. So the escrow and rehab work together. That says hey, I'll do the work the right way. There's 100 grand. If I produce the work, you'll pay me the money. So it protects both parties. And then the escrow release is basically saying hey, I spent 20. Here's my document. I need you to release $20,000 back to me to reimburse me for the work that was done.
That's great. You know what I love about this is that you're making it a win-win for both parties, meaning
sure.
that it's a win-win for you, but you're also making them feel protected as well too, because if you've basically addressed all of their concerns so that they can feel comfortable in obviously acting as a bank and lending the money, which is obviously awesome. Let me ask you this: do a lot of the private money lenders ask for an after repair value of the property? And is that done by an appraiser, or is that something that maybe you as the investor just kind of can show them comparables, or is it case by case type of a situation?
Yeah, no, great question. So at the beginning, when you're working with a appraisal is not required. Let's just start with that. You do not need an appraisal, period. If you're working with a hard money lender, then and hard money and private money, two very different things. A hard money lender is an institution with guidelines. A private money lender is somebody you met that lends you money. So if somebody requires an appraisal, it's probably a hard money lender, not a private money lender. So at the beginning, when I usually work with someone for the first time, they'll usually ask for the numbers, for the purchase price, the rehab budget, the ARV, the profitability, et cetera, et cetera. And I got no problem, giving that to them, on the first, one or two go rounds. And usually I just send them comps. I'm like, hey, here's our house. It's 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,200 square feet with a 1-car attached garage. Here's 3 comps with 3 beds, 2 baths, 1,200 square feet with a 1-car garage. They're selling at $250. So I think we can all agree, it's worth $250,000. Then they look at that. They're like, okay, that makes sense. And if it's worth $250, I'm borrowing $160. So even if I'm off by $50,000, there's still plenty of margin in this deal, right? So yeah, you can give them, comps to support your ARV, your after repaired value. I know I've never provided an appraisal with a private money lender. I feel like there's a part 2 to that question, but I forget the part 2.
No, the other thing I was going to ask is what are the terms usually that these private money lenders want to see? Is it a year loan, a 2-year, a 5-year, a 10-year? Is it case by case? And maybe talk about some of the different structures or just different types of term of the loan. I know that you already mentioned about the interest rate. It can be anywhere Can you talk also about the interest rate as well too?
Yeah,
Points and also like term of the loan. And is
yeah,
it interest only? Is it interest plus principal? Are payments typically made monthly, quarterly, yearly?
for sure. So the first thing is it's 100% negotiable. So you can literally, if you can negotiate a 1% interest rate, like more power to you. It's not illegal to do that, right? So it's 100% up to the two of you. Whatever the two of you can agree to is good to go. So I'll kind of tell you what I do and why I do it. And that'll kind of answer the question. So I'm happy to pay anywhere from like 8 to 12% interest on a deal. If I can get it for 4 or 6%, like that's amazing. But like 8, 10, 12%, I'm more than happy to do that. Once I start paying like 14% or 16%, 16% is the highest I've ever paid. But it gets expensive very quickly and cuts into your profitability pretty heavily. So that's where I've been with those. A point, some lenders will charge a point just to make a little bit extra money. But usually like 1 point or 2 point, is not out of this world. If they're charging like 5 points, you should probably go find another private money lender. But 1 or 2 points. So if they lend you 200 grand and they charge 2 points, that's a $4,000 fee to use the money. So again, not the end of the world. But as you grow into this, you don't want to keep paying points because obviously you want to keep as much profit for you as possible. So I haven't paid points in years because I have access to a lot of lenders. Now, if you're starting out and somebody's charging 12% and 4 points, but it's the only money you have access to, do the deal, right? It's not the cost of the money that's important. It's the availability of the money that really matters because you do the deal. Now you have instant credibility. Now you can go raise more money. But anywhere from 8 to 12, I'm happy. Anywhere from 0 to 1, maybe 2 points, I'm happy. And then I borrow it on a 12-month note with an automatic 90-day extension written into it. So usually we're in and out of deals in 3 to 6 months, but we borrow it for 12 months, just in case anything, were to ever happen. And if you're doing like a huge new construction, you might want to borrow it for like 24 months or something. Just give yourself enough time to do the deal. And then the other big thing that I do different from most other people, which is huge as you grow, I do not pay monthly interest payments. All my interest accrues until the sale of the property. So, like if I borrow 100 grand at 12% interest, it's $1,000 a month in interest that I would owe to my lender. But what I do is it just accrues. So if it takes me 6 months to buy, renovate, and sell a property, then I'd owe them 100 grand plus $6,000 in interest when I sell the property. And the reason I do that is as I scale, if I'm doing 10 deals, at $100,000 a piece, paying $1,000 per deal, that's $10,000 a month in interest payments that I'd have to be paying out to these private money lenders. So it doesn't change anything to the private money lender. It actually complicates things, in my opinion, even more because I got to remember to pay for it. They got to remember to account for it. We got to remember if I paid it or if I didn't pay it at the end when I pay off the loan. So it just complicates things, right? And even if somebody wants monthly payments, I'll even like let's say I can negotiate an 8% interest rate, but they need monthly interest payments because they're living on this money. Maybe they're in retirement and they need monthly payments, which is fine. Instead of 8%, I'll give them 10% to not pay monthly payments. So if I'm like, hey, I understand I can pay you 8% with interest, monthly interest, or how about I give you 10% interest, but we let it accrue until the payoff of the property? Because I don't want to have any money out of my pocket. That's my goal in every deal in real estate that I ever do, to not use my own money. So if you have to make monthly interest payments, you're using your money. So you want to, defer it until the sale of the property. And the cool thing, again, when you're working with private money lenders, most people don't even know what anything that I just said is. So when I talk to people, I don't even give them an option for monthly payments. They're like, well, how does this work? I tell them exactly what I told you. And I say, hey, all the interest accrues until the sale of the property. We'll pay you all your principal, all your interest once we sell it. And that's how it works. And they're like, oh, cool. That sounds great. They don't even know, that's even an option. So don't even bring it up if you don't want it to be an option. So I think those. Oh, and we paid 90 days minimum interest. So if we only use it for 60 days, we'll pay at least 90 days in interest just to make it worth their time. And no prepayment penalty on our side. and then they can cash out within 45 days. So like if some crazy life emergency comes up and they need the money back, we just ask for a 45-day notice, and then we'll bring in another lender, pay them off, and then put the new lender in place at that point. So those are kind of the terms that I borrow at personally.
And that gives them certainty, basically, that they can cash out at different times as well.
Yeah, I've
Too.
never had anybody cash out, but it makes them feel comfortable.
Let's say that they don't have access to somebody with 300,000, but they combine private financing with maybe like a hard money lender, or they combine private financing with maybe like a traditional lender as well too. Can you talk about maybe that combination? Because that's something that I did recently, and it was like, whoa, like literally no money out of the pocket. The private money lender put the down payment. The hard money guy financed the rest of it. You're into it with no money down, basically. Have you ever done a structure like that? And can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So with traditional financing, I've never been able to see it done because most banks, when they underwrite you, they want to see that money seasoned, which means
Mhm.
that it has to be in your account for 3 to 6 months or something before. Or if it comes in randomly, you have to source that money. And me lending you money is not a good source, so they're not going to approve you for the deal. So with traditional banks, I haven't seen it be able to happen. But with hard money and double private money, it happens all the time. So, like for an example, again, that $200,000 deal, 100K purchase, 100K rehab. Most hard money lenders will give like 90% of the purchase and 90% of the rehab, give or take a little bit there. So if they're giving you 90% of 200, they're going to lend you $180,000 for the deal. So you need to come up with $20,000 to fund the remaining portion of the deal. If it were me, I would borrow $30,000 or $35,000 because with hard money, you have to front the rehab and then get reimbursed, and you have to make monthly interest payments. Unlike private money, where you can negotiate that, hard money requires the monthly payments. So I would over borrow. So instead of borrowing 20, borrow 30 or $40,000. So you have additional money to make those monthly interest payments, and you have enough money to front the rehab and then get reimbursed. You spend 20, they reimburse you 20. You spend 20, they reimburse you 20. And this entire time, you're still using other people's money, right? So that's huge. So like a lot of times it's hard to find a private money lender for 200 grand, but people will have 20, 40, $60,000. So those people you can use, they would just be in second lien position. So what that means is like if you were ever to default and the hard money lender was to foreclose on the property, any money that's left at the sale pays off the hard money lender. And then if there's any money left over, the private money lender would get whatever's left. Again, we're buying this at such a discount. The likelihood of there not being enough money to pay everybody off is very slim. But there is more risk being in second position. So that would just be a conversation I would have with that private money lender, just so they're not like blindsided by anything. But I've done it before in the past. I think I've used hard money like 3 or 4 times in my career. And it's called gap financing. So the gap is your down payment. And I've always raised gap for that, difference. So I don't have to bring money to the table. And then even on the private money side, so same scenario, 100K purchase, 100K rehab, raising 200 grand. Let's say, you're calling around and a private money lender has $150,000. You're like, okay, cool. Like you're going to go in first position, and then you're going to go find another lender for $50,000. They're going to go in second position, and now you still have your entire deal funded, a total of 200 grand in first and second lien position, two different private money lenders. So you can do it, private money and private money, or you can do it hard money and private money. But 100%, you can get these deals funded without using your money for sure.
I love that. Now, when somebody's in second position, you said something about a business guarantee early on, and you said something about a personal guarantee.
Yep.
It's funny. I've never really heard of people doing personal guarantees or a business guarantee, but I almost feel like that gives people certainty. Can you kind of explain what that means to the actual lender of having that?
Yep. So very huge difference, and I'll take it to a third step once I explain these two. But so let's say I'm lending you money, right, and I'm lending it to Morales LLC, and you get into the deal and you think it's going to be a home run, and then you realize you screwed up all the numbers. Your rehab was way less than what it needed to be. Your ARV was way higher than what it actually is. And then you're looking at the deal and you're like, man, like I'm going to lose money on this deal. Like I'm not going to finish this rehab. Like this, I'm not going to spend 6 months of my life to lose money. Like I'm just going to walk away. So if I have a business guarantee from you, your business owes me my money. But if you're like, nah, close the LLC and file bankruptcy, now all of a sudden I'm in bankruptcy hearings trying to get any money that's left over. The problem is like there's probably no money in the LLC, or you took the money out of the LLC and now there's nothing to repay me. So that's the problem, right? But if it's a business guarantee and a personal guarantee, no matter what happens, you're personally still on the hook to pay that money back. So when I borrow money, I'm getting it 100% funded from them in the first place. So like I'm not putting my money into the deal. So I would never borrow money on a deal that I would not put my own money into. But along with that, the same thing goes, right? If the deal screws up, if everything, goes wrong, like I want people to feel comfortable knowing that like I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. Not only am I going to give you a business guarantee, I'm going to give you a personal guarantee. So even if the business bankrupts, I'm still going to work with you. I might not be able to pay it back, in the year, if I lost everything. But listen, I'm going to pay you every month for the next 5 years because I still owe you that money. So having a business guarantee and a personal guarantee is huge to make sure that, on the borrowing and on the lending side, again, protecting both parties, that like everybody does what they say that they're going to do.
Yeah, it protects everybody, and it basically shows genuine, like, hey, look, I'm not trying to run off with your money. I'm not
Sure.
trying to steal your money in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, we're just trying to create a win-win situation. So earlier you also talked about like a credibility package. If I were going to create my own credibility package, is there a template that I can buy somewhere? Is there a structure that credibility package, is that something that you sell to other people? How can somebody go about creating their own credibility package? Because as a real estate agent, I have something similar. Before I go on a listing appointment, I send out what's called the pre-listing package, which
Yep.
is basically a credibility package. It just kind of tells them who we are, what we're going to do, what we've done for other clients, examples of other properties. And
Yep.
the whole point is for them to review before I get there. That way, they can come up with questions by the time I get there based on that credibility package, or the credibility package answers a majority of their questions. So can you talk a little bit about that and how somebody can go about creating a credibility package?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, we do have coaching programs if somebody wants a template, but, I'll give it to you, what the structure looks like. It is something that you can build. But basically we call it a guide to private money lending. And then as you open it, it's a little bit about me personally, making myself sound as great as possible. I bought my first house when I was 20. I flipped my first house when I was 22. Or when I didn't do any of that stuff, it was like, I've gone through this education. I've studied X amount of books. I've hired this mentor. I've walked 30 different houses with this other guy that flips houses. So like it puts you up like as credible as possible, right? And then after that, it goes on to then explain like what private money lending is. So, what are the terms, and you can put ranges 8 to 12%, no interest payments or whatever it is that you want to structure your business around. And then also goes to explain, the documents that are used. We make the comparison between banks versus private money lenders, which is basically the same thing. We make comparisons between like the stock market, where all you own is paper, which can disappear overnight, versus real estate, where you own an asset that doesn't crash overnight. So we make some like good comparisons to make people think like, oh, like this is actually a really good investment. We write out where people can get access to money from. So, home equity lines of credit, cash value life insurance policies, self-directed IRA, self-directed retirement accounts. So, a bunch of different ways people can get access to money. And then we do like a deal case study. So now it's one of our deals. When I first started, it was somebody else's deal. And I didn't say like, hey, this is my deal. This is like, hey, this is an example of what a deal would look like. And then you give them that example, the before, the afters, the numbers, the profitability, all that stuff. And then at the end, it's the frequently asked questions. So, what happens if you die? How is my money protected? How do I get paid back? Do you make monthly interest payments? So all the frequently asked questions are already answered, to, again, create more trust, create more credibility, showing that you actually know what you're talking about. And then the last page sums it up in a paragraph, and it says, are you ready to invest? Call me at 1111111. So, that's kind of the gist of what a credibility packet looks like. But it's for the same reason that you just said, is to make you look credible and to get them, comfortable / questions. So when you meet them, it's a much easier conversation than trying to explain all that to them in one sitting.
It also gives them something physical as well, too, to be able to review. So you said something about the frequently asked question, if somebody dies. What does happen if somebody dies?
For sure. So I got asked this question and I didn't know the answer. So again, I didn't get that person's money. So it's something I've just kind of learned over time. But when they asked me that, I was like, I don't know. It's a good question. But the answer is, what would happen? You would die, which means you would default on the note. You wouldn't make the payment because you're not here to make the payment. And then what would happen is they would foreclose on the property, and then the property would go to foreclosure. It would be sold at foreclosure, and then the proceeds would then go back to the lender, assuming that the property sold for more than what the lender lent on the property. So I explained that. And then, once that happened to me, what I did personally is I went out and got a life insurance policy. So that my life insurance policies covered all my debts. So if something were to happen, I tell my lenders, like, worst case scenario, I have X amount of life insurance. So if anything does happen, everybody gets paid out. So that's my answer to that question now.
I love it, bro. You have virtually come up with a solution to everything. like literally, like it almost feels like me at a listing appointment. Like there's a solution to almost everything. I wanted to ask you, so does the private money typically only work if you're flipping the property within the specified time? Because you're never getting private or traditional financing, and only if it's a Buror, almost, I feel like it would work as well too. So I know that you briefly mentioned what a Buror is at the beginning. Can you kind of go over it again, and maybe go over how to find a property at that much of a discount? Not a lot, just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So private money, I use private money for short term. I know people that use private money for long term. So, they're in markets where houses are super cheap and they can afford to pay 10% interest or 8% interest or whatever the number is, and the property's still cash flow. So, you can borrow money for 5 years, 100 grand for 5 years, at 8% interest is like $600-700 a month or something like that. And then that property then rents for $1,400 a month. They make their principal and interest payment, which is to you, and then your taxes and insurance is called $1,000, and they're renting it for $1,400. So 5 years, you're getting your $700 a month or whatever the math is, and then they're making $400 a month in profit. So you can structure it long term. I've never done that. I've always done short term. So we borrow money to buy, renovate, and sell houses, and usually in a 3 to 12 month timeline. And then we also use it for the Buror method. So if instead of buy, renovate, sell, it's buy, renovate, rent, refinance. So we're going to go in same thing, 200 grand, 100K purchase, 100K rehab, ARV's $300,000. Buy it, renovate it, rent it out for $2,000 a month. Refinance it with a bank. The bank usually gives a 75% refinance, which means they give 75% of 300 grand, which is $225,000. So I borrowed 200 grand. Now I'm going to owe interest on that money. So call that another $15,000. And then I'm going to owe closing costs and utility fees. Call that another $8,000. So I owe 200 plus 15 plus 8. That's $223,000. And the bank will refi me out $225,000. So I take that 225 grand. I pay all those things off. I'm left with $2,000 to put into my pocket as profit, tax-free profit. And then it rents for $2,000 a month. My mortgage, let's say, is $1,400 a month, and I make $600 a month in profit. So on the refinance or on the sale, the private money lender has to be paid off all their principal and all their interest. So That's kind of how we structure the private money, two different scenarios. And then as far as like finding deals, if it works as a flip, it usually works as a burr, right? So a lot of people, go out there, flip houses, make 15% profitability, whatever that final number is, 10%. But when you refinance it, you don't have to pay realtor fees. And you save a little bit on the hold time sometimes. So, if you're paying a 6% commission and your profitability is, 15%, that's 21% of the deal. And you only need to be at 25% to do the burr method without using any of your own money. So normally if it works as a flip, a lot of the times it works as a burr to keep as a long-term rental property. The only other thing you got to look at is income versus expenses. So it might work cash out wise, but then you're renting it at $2,000 a month and your mortgage is $3,000 a month. That doesn't work. You're negatively cash flowing $1,000 a month. So it's a two thing that you got to look at. You got to make sure you're all in for less than 75 cents on the dollar. And it has to cash flow positive so you don't lose money every month.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. So we've talked a lot about what to do. Raising private money, or not raising private money, just receiving money from other people has like rules, regulations. What not to do?
Yeah. So the huge thing is guarantee. Like if you use the words guarantee, and people will ask me this all the time, they're like, was it a guaranteed return? No, it's not guaranteed. Just like any investment. So somebody asked me that, was it guaranteed? Mr. Seller, excuse me, Mr. Lender, just like anything in life, nothing's guaranteed. You said you currently have your money in the stock market. As you know, it just crashed 20% overnight. So nothing's guaranteed, just like this investment here. But the good thing is, unlike the stock market or unlike whatever it is that they're invested into at the moment, unlike that, real estate doesn't crash overnight. You're secured by a real asset that nobody's ever making more land. You have a mortgage on the property. You have a business guarantee and a personal guarantee. Tesla is not guaranteeing to pay you your money back. I'm signing a personal guarantee where I'm on the hook to pay you the money back. So no, it's not guaranteed, but there's a lot of things that back your investment, Mr. Lender. So that's definitely the huge thing. Do not use the word guaranteed. And then another thing, you don't want to commingle funds. So we talked about borrowing money and putting a first lender and a second lender. That's okay because they both have their own mortgage. They both have their own promissory note. They're completely separate from one another. You do not want to commingle funds. So for that deal, like I don't want to call Bob and be like, yo, send me 150 grand, and then call Joe like, yo, send me 50 grand. They both send me money, and then I give them a mortgage and a note together, and they don't even know one another. So you never want to like commingle funds. You always want to keep it separate, and then you're usually okay. And then the other thing is, I never take money personally. So, when I'm closing the deal, nobody ever sends me personally or my businesses any money ever. Everything goes through a title company. So if I'm buying a deal, the lender is sending that money to the title company. The title company is closing the deal, making me sign the promissory note, making me sign the mortgage, making me get title insurance, making me get a builder's risk insurance policy, getting all those documents in place. Once those documents are in place, they send the money to the seller, and then they send the rest of the money to me to fund the rehab. So I don't ever want to touch somebody else's money unless it's done, the right way through a title company. Because like you can forget to record a mortgage, you can forget to get a promissory note notarized. Like there's just too many things up there that you can mess up on. And at the end of the day, you're on the hook for it. If I have a title company do it, like, look, like it's the title company's fault. Sue the title company, right? So it just gives you an extra barrier of, I don't know, separation, I guess. So I always take money through the title company. So those are the first things that rung to me of things not to do.
And then what is the difference between a mortgage and a note?
A mortgage is recorded at the recorder site. So if somebody looks up, if you lent me money on 123 East Main Street and somebody looks up 123 East Main Street, it shows that I owe you, 200 grand on this property. But the mortgage without a promissory note kind of really doesn't do anything. The promissory note is me personally and businessly guaranteeing to pay you back. And if I default on the promissory note, you then use that to foreclose with the mortgage. So they're kind of synonymous. You kind of have to have one without the other. But let's say you lend me money and I just give you a promissory note and not a mortgage. So you lend me money on a promissory note and I'm like, I'm not going to pay you today. The only thing you can do is sue me in court. And then we're going to sit there and fight it out. And, we're going to go at bat and you're probably never going to see any of your money. But if you have a promissory note and a mortgage, and I'm like, I don't want to pay you today, then you foreclose on the property using the mortgage. So the mortgage is another layer of backing to the investment that somebody has. So they kind of don't really work without one another, or they don't work the way they should without one another. Does that make sense? Hopefully, I explained
I
that right.
love this, bro. Yeah, this was fantastic. Good, man. So obviously, I know that there's a lot more. I know that you do have a book. I know that you do have coaching programs as well, too. If somebody wanted to buy your book, where could they find it? If somebody wanted to get involved in one of your coaching programs, what do you teach on there? And where can they go to do that as well?
Yeah, man. So the book's called Get Free Houses. So if you go to howtogetfreehouses.com, you can grab a copy of that. It's basically how to build wealth without using any of your own money. And then Instagram is at Austin Rutherford Official. We have coaching programs. We teach, how to find deals, how to raise money, how to flip houses, how to do the Burr method correctly. So really kind of all different aspects of real estate. And then on my Instagram at Austin Rutherford Official, I just, talk about real estate all day, every day. So you can learn some stuff on there too.
Cool, man. Well, I just want to say that I appreciate, obviously, you coming on the show. This is extremely in depth, so I appreciate, obviously, you doing that as well, too. And just for all of our viewers out there, this was episode number 122. We had Austin Rutherford. Today, he taught us how to buy a house with no money down, not a gimmick, bad credit, no credit, not a problem. And if you've enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you feel that this interview would be helpful to anybody, make sure to hit that share button. Anything else, Austin?
No, man, I just appreciate the opportunity, brother.
Yeah, likewise, man. I appreciate you, and I love the idea of PML because I used to have it like on a Trello board, but PML is just so much easier just on your phone, and you just put PML. So I'm gonna
literally
go
burning
home.
through contact by contact.
Yeah, awesome, brother. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, and thank you again.